Thank you, Ari, for the concession. Well, for nearly 4 years, we have all been living in a grim reality show that should, let's frankly, never have made it past the pilot. But in 57 days, we will start anew with President Joe Biden leading the country. Regardless of Donald Trump's pathological inability to concede, the transition is now well underway. Today, the White House approved giving Biden the president's daily brief. And this afternoon, President-elect Biden formally introduced his top foreign policy and national security team. In an exclusive interview with NBC's Lester Holt, Biden described the message that he is sending with his initial cabinet picks.
America's back. We're at the head of the table once again. I've spoken with over 20 world leaders, and they all are literally really pleased and somewhat excited. America's going to reassert its role in the world and be a coalition builder.
This lineup, those you've selected so far, a lot of familiar faces among them. What do you say to those who are wondering if you're trying to create a third Obama term?
This is not a third Obama term because we face a totally different world than we faced in the Obama-Biden administration. President Trump has changed the landscape. It's become America first, which meant America alone.
These first picks may not all be well known to the American people, but each is highly respected in their own departments. As the Washington Post notes, with these picks, Biden, quote, aims to reverse much of Trump's agenda with figures who have promoted the policies that Trump rebuffed, denigrated, and used to help fuel his rise to power. It's also an attempt to bring back normalcy to what has been nothing but a clown show at 1600 Black Lives Matter Plaza. Now, in case you forgot what normal sounds like, here it is.
America, at its best, still has a greater ability than any other country on earth to bring others together to meet the challenges of our time.
I know, Mr. President-elect and Madam Vice President-elect, that you've selected us not to serve you, but to serve on behalf of the American people.
On this day, I'm thinking about the American people, my fellow career diplomats and public servants around the world. I want to say to you, America is back. Multilateralism is back. Diplomacy is back.
While each member of the Biden team comes from varying backgrounds, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris noted what brings them together.
They also share something else in common, an unwavering belief in America's ideals, an unshakable commitment to democracy, human rights, and the rule of law.
I want to bring in Melody Barnes, former domestic policy advisor to President Barack Obama, Jason Johnson, professor of journalism and politics at Morgan State University, and Michael Beschloss, NBC News presidential historian. I'm really excited to talk to all of you. I want to play very quickly one more little bite, and this is Alejandro Mayorkas and the Secretary of State nominee Anthony Blinken talking about their family stories. Take a listen.
My father and mother brought me to this country to escape communism. They cherished our democracy and were intensely proud to become United States citizens, as was I.
My late stepfather, Samuel Pizarro, he was one of 900 children in his school in Białystok, Poland, but the only one to survive the Holocaust after 4 years in concentration camps. At the end of the war, he made a break from a death march into the woods in Bavaria. From his hiding place, he heard a deep rumbling sound. It was a tank, but instead of the Iron Cross, he saw painted on its side a 5-pointed white star. He ran to the tank. The hatch opened. An African-American GI looked down at him. He got down on his knees and said the only 3 words that he knew in English that his mother had taught him before the war: God bless America.
Michael Beschloss, you know, it occurred to me as I was listening to this today that, you know, there's a timbre and a tone and a lexicon of America that we've all gotten so used to hearing in public life, whether it is from an ambassador or a secretary of state. There's just a way that public leaders in this country talk, whether or not their policies match what they're saying, but it's a way that they speak. And I haven't heard it for so long that this was like an assault on my senses, hearing people speak that way again. How did you take in what you heard today and these poignant, incredible stories that they were telling?
I loved it. This is like being at the end of The Wizard of Oz, and we've gone through a nightmare of 3 years and 10 months, and the dream is over, and now we're back to reality with good people who are coming to very important positions. And it's also nice, Joy, to take a look at a group of appointees that don't look like a restricted all-white country club, which too many of the Donald Trump people have for the last three years and 10 months. And the other thing, you know, you were showing Avril Haines, who's the new DNI. You know, the first thing she says to Biden in public is, you know that I never shy away from speaking truth to power. Did that ever happen with anyone who worked with Donald Trump? It was always, dear leader. Trump hates dogs. He loves lap dogs. And you had people that he appointed like Mike Flynn and Robert O'Brien and Chris Miller. I don't know if they were nice people or not, but they certainly did not belong in those jobs. And they were so unqualified and so thrilled to be there that they went along with a lot of things that no appointee should ever stand for. That's the way it's supposed to work in a democracy.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll update it to the Wiz, because I do love the Wiz more. The Can You Feel a Brand New Day soundtrack was playing in my head the whole time that I was listening to them talk. It's like,
over? Right.
Yeah, don't threaten me with a good time.
Right.
Don't threaten me with a good time. You know, Defense Secretary James Mattis wrote an article in Foreign Affairs, and he wrote, "Why U.S. security depends on alliances more than ever." He wrote, "The United States today is undermining the foundations of an international order manifestly advantageous to U.S. interests, reflecting a basic ignorance of the extent to which both robust alliances and international institutions provide vital strategic depth. In practice, America first has meant America alone," something Biden said today. "That has damaged this country's ability to address problems before they reach U.S. territory and has thus compounded the danger emergent threats pose." And, you know, Melody, it strikes me that Donald Trump's team were not just sort of B-listers when it came to who he staffed in. Some of them were actually, you know, generals and people who should have been A-listers, but even they didn't have the courage to speak up to Donald Trump, right? And they went in, you thinking maybe they could rein him in, and they didn't even try. And you know, it's the one place that the neoconservatives and I came to agreement during the Trump years, that the post-World War II order actually meant something and did organize the world in a way that kept the world safer. And then Trump just threw it away and went Russia first, North Korea first. How easy, in your mind, will it be for this normal that felt so good today to kick in and actually change things?
Well, those are fantastic questions. You know, I think when President-elect Biden said America's back, I also think professionalism is back. I think that the belief in expertise is back. The belief that the American government can be a force for good, both domestically and internationally, is back. But it will take some time for that message to be believed, for people to see our actions both at home and abroad, and to see that those words and those actions match one another. In fact, I think part of what has to happen is there has to be a resetting of the culture of American government and America as a force for democracy in the world. That is something that's sad and troubling to say. Those stories that Tony Blinken was telling, that Alejandro Mayorkas was telling, were very, very powerful. But I believe that Americans are going to have to work hard to have others around the world believe that we mean what we say and we say what we mean.
Yeah, absolutely, because we're still the country that elected the guy from The Apprentice and thought he should be president, and then he got 80 million votes the second time. Like, we're still that country, too. And, I love having Jason on, because Jason is willing to be contrarian, and I appreciate that. And you've been getting, people have been mad at you on Twitter, because I think, it feels so good that we almost don't want to interrogate it. We want to say, oh, these people are experts, they're smart, they've got great degrees. I know some people like Marco Rubio hate degrees, and they think degrees are bad, but they've got degrees, and they're intelligent. Don't question it. But the thing that does worry me. Okay, and I'm going to play you a soundbite. And this is Biden, President-elect Biden's interview with Lester Holt. And then I have a question for you on the other side.
Have you considered, for the sake of national unity, selecting or nominating a Republican, someone who voted for President Trump?
Yes, and we still have a lot more appointments to make. I want this country to be united. The purpose of our administration is, once again, united. We can't keep this virulent political dialogue going. It has to end.
What about former rivals from your own party, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren? Have you talked to them about cabinet positions?
Well, I've talked to them. Look, as I said, we already have significant representation among progressives in our administration, but there's nothing really off the table. But one thing is really critical. Taking someone out of the Senate, taking someone out of the House, particularly a person of consequence, is a really difficult decision that would have to be made.
It's smart. Don't take people out of contested states where the Republicans have the governorship. But, you know, Jason, you've got the idea they may be considering Rahm Emanuel for a position. You say Rahm Emanuel, I think Laquan McDonald. There's talk about Heidi Heitkamp potentially having a position. You know, there are questions about whether the meatpacking industry, which haven't been star players in terms of COVID, would cheer, but people who are concerned about the workers in these, you know, in these plants would be concerned if it's not someone like a Marcia Fudge instead. So are you worried that Biden's tendency toward conciliation will mean that he, I don't know, sort of gives away the game?
Jesus.
Have we lost Jason? Oh, we lost Jason. Oh, no. Oh, no. Okay. We're going to try to get him back. So I guess I'll go to you, Melody, on that question until we get Jason back. Does it worry you at all that Biden might be too conciliatory in who he brings in?
Well, one of the things we know is that Joe Biden has been in government for quite some time. And if you are a student of Joe Biden, and I spent time on the Senate Judiciary Committee as a staff person watching him when he was both chair and ranking member and working with him in the Obama White House. And one, you have to understand who he is and and what his record represents. Two, that like most presidents, he wants to surround himself with a diversity of opinions and a diversity of views. But ultimately, and this is what I mean when I say study Joe Biden, he's ultimately going to make the decision that he thinks is the best set of decisions for the country. I believe that he will create a coalition and that kind of diversity that I was just speaking of, that not everyone is going to like everyone that's a part of his cabinet or a part of his senior White House staff. But ultimately, I think the norms, I think his values and his principles that he talked about on the campaign trail are going to be what drive him. We can see that already in some of the selections that he's made. And ultimately, I think this coalition that's very diverse that sent him to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue will see him act on those same values and those same principles.
Okay, so the gremlins got you, Jason. I don't know if you heard what Melody just said, but do you agree with it?
No, I don't. I heard one small part of it. Look, this is the greatest concern I had about Joe Biden, even though I always thought he was the candidate most likely to win amongst all the Democrats. He is too conciliatory. Okay, this is not about working together. I don't want Rahm Emanuel anywhere near a presidential administration. This is a guy who was more concerned about Jussie Smollett than he was about Laquan McDonald. I don't want John Kasich, who was in favor of suppressing as many votes as he could, to be anywhere near this administration. Joe Biden needs to recognize that he has 4 years to make the case that obnoxious, aggressive, white nationalist Trumpism isn't effective, that he can rally the country around strong, difficult principles again. And that means picking people who may sometimes buck the trend. Look, diversity is great, but if all that diversity includes people who are all in favor of drone strikes and bombing Yemen, that's not a good thing. He needs to have an administration that's willing to change some directions. I'll say this, Joy, after looking at some of the people that are brought out today, They're all nice people. They all have wonderful backgrounds. They seem like perfectly wonderful neighbors who will, share their leaf blower with you and everything else like that. But what I want to see is who he picks at a domestic level, who he takes for Secretary of Labor, who he takes for Interior, who he ends up pitting in as Attorney General. Because the domestic changes that will support American life, that will protect children who are coming over here as refugees at the border, that will be what really determines if Joe Biden ran on changing the soul of America or trying to take us back to some fictitious heyday of the Obama years, which weren't great for everybody to begin with.
Well, and Michael, I'll give you the last word on this. You're our historian. You have to be the tiebreaker here because, look, Biden could come in and try to be FDR and say, I'm going to make big change because big change is required in this moment. He could be LBJ and say, damn it, I know I'm a Southerner, but this can't last. Like, we have to make dramatic change. Or he could try to come in and be a conciliator and just try to hold the line, maybe be more of a Carter and say, I just want everyone to get along and let's try to do, smaller things that are nice but don't really change anything. And that feels to me, I think I'm with Jason on this, I feel like that sets up 2024 to be a referendum on nothing happened, nothing changed in my life, therefore give me another rule breaker. And then we could get a smart version of Trump. And that's what scares me most.
Joe Biden is the head of a party that is probably in many cases more progressive than he is. He knows that. He cannot just sit on his oars and say, I'm going to run this as if it's Dwight Eisenhower in 1955. And I think the people appointed today really reflect that. But Joy, can't we just, I totally agree with what Jason said, but at the same time, I would love just to spend tonight enjoying this day, having new people appointed these positions. I don't have to worry about whether they are secretly working for a foreign government, whether they're there to steal money, whether they're there to help Donald Trump make an authoritarian takeover of the United States. I think we're pretty near out of the clear. As you know, my wife and I have two sons that are in their 20s. I have felt for 3 years and 10 months, every single day, they have been in danger. I think tonight, maybe
Absolutely.
I'll be able to start going to sleep.
Indeed, no neo-Nazis, nobody that's going to sell us out to Russia. I mean, all I have to say is everybody look up because it's a different way of living now, right? I mean, it is. I was ready to sing the whole Wiz soundtrack today.
All right, we'll sing it together.
Thank you, Melody Barnes. Jason Johnson. Sing it on Twitter.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Michael Beschloss, Jason Johnson, you guys too. Melody Barnes, have a happy Thanksgiving. Up next on The Read, I swear I won't sing anymore. Donald Trump.